Blog Talk Radio. Blog Talk Radio.
America Meditating Blog Talk Radio Show. We collect wisdom, hear stories, and inspire each other. I'm Sister Jenna. Tune in live from Monday through Friday at 8 a.m.
And blind, Helen Keller overcame her world of darkness. Foresight, pass it on from the Foundation for a Better Life at values.com.
Do you like to meditate? Have you tried to meditate? Have you struggled with meditation? Why don't you visit one of the Brahma Kumaris Meditation Center? Visit brahmakumaris.org. Hello and welcome to America Meditating Radio Show. I'm your host, Sister Jenna, and you can get a chance to join us every day, Monday through Friday, live on air, to talk to some of our guests and to learn more about how our inner world, our consciousness, our understanding of ourselves is actually getting clearer. Perhaps one of the most greatest struggles that we encounter is when we're just not clear. We're not sure who we are, where we've come from, where we belong, and what we're supposed to do. So as a result, can I really assist another person's life to be guided in a powerful way, let alone my own? So, this show is about helping us to grow and learn more, to remember the things that are absolutely crucial and what's absolutely important. Perhaps one of the most challenging experiences is to be very current, to be just in a very good state of being present. And there are times that people ask, where do you get your energy from? And I always say, well, if I use my time, energy, and wealth in ways that are benevolent and useful, I will experience a lot of happiness and strength internally. It'll even convey that in my relationships. We waste a lot of time and energy thinking unhelpfully of the past, or we create expectations of such an idealistic future that we didn't qualify ourselves for. Yesterday is gone, and it is what I do in this moment that will determine the future that I and others would like to see. So what I have to do is what? Focus my attention on what I've got in front of me. I've got to check what my thoughts are saying about me, what's my interpretation about myself. And the first place we start is with our thoughts. Second, check your words. Third, observe your behavior and your actions. You are listening to America Meditating. We're looking very forward to our special guest, Dr. Jonathan, who's going to be with us, or Jonathan-Ellerby, I should say. He'll be with us shortly, and we're going to learn a lot about his journey and some of the good things that he's been up to. But before we get the good doctor on the air, why don't we just take a few moments and breathe in, relax, and go to my Off to Work CD with our favorite track on Letting Go. Breathe in, relax. Om Shanti. The time that we choose to be aware doesn't necessarily require me to just sit and meditate. But even while I walk and move around, I can be in a meditative awareness, which is awareness of the soul, the original, eternal, imperishable being of light. For a little while, I'd like to invite you to be present, to be here, and to be now. Allow your mind to settle in the moment, to relax. This meditation is about awareness. It's about becoming aware of your original and eternal self. It's about connecting to your truth. Let go of your name. And observe yourself feeling nameless. Let go of your gender, to discontinue thinking you're a man or a woman. Let it go and observe how you would feel walking around without a gender. Let go of the role that you play and let go of the titles that you own. Observe how you're feeling as you are gradually letting go. Let go of your religion and put it aside just for now. And let go of your nationality and even the language that you're accustomed to. Imagine you have no name, gender, role, title, religion, nationality, or even a language. Ask yourself, how do you feel at this moment? And in this feeling, who would think of you and who would you think of? The Supreme Soul would think of you, and you, the liberated soul, would think of the Supreme. In this state of absolute freedom, I am truly who I am. A free, peaceful, pure, immortal, and eternal soul. Allow yourself to just be absorbed in this awareness. At this time, we breathe in, we breathe out, and we actually let go of all of the attachments and the limitations that have turned our faces away from ourselves and from divinity. So why don't we go to Sister Gita to read us something before we get the great Dr. Jonathan Ellerby on the line. So, Sister Gita, have you got a beautiful reading for us before we go to Dr. Ellerby?
Yes. Hey, good morning. I would love to talk about an angel whispering. And this is done by Patricia Tashiro. And the question posed is, how can I be happy when life seems to be so unfair, she asked. But how can I be happy when life is unfair? When others do wrong, it's more than I can bear. I know you may think what they did is a shame, the angel replied. And now you feel miserable, so they are to blame. But let me tell you a secret that is really true. The way that you feel is solely because of you. You had a thought they should act a certain way, but they did something different, and you had no say. So who is to blame for you taking sorrow? And who is at fault when you seek revenge tomorrow? Is it the other who didn't do as you please? Or is it you whose thoughts were diseased? The other's capacity you failed to consider? This was the problem. This made you bitter. So, when you feel you're starting to think, stop and ask yourself, what did I think? What did I expect that the other failed to do? But don't examine the other. Just look at you. This is paying attention to yourself. The angel replied. Om Shanti.
That is incredible. That is so amazing. Wow. That touched me, actually. That was very moving. We are delighted to go to our special guest, Dr. Jonathan Ellerby, featured as an expert in films, print, television, radio. Dr. Ellerby is a 2-time best-selling author, and his most recent book is entitled The Promise of Paradise, Life-Changing Lessons from the Tropics. He serves as the executive director and lead minister at the Althea Center for Engaged Spirituality in Denver, Colorado. And Dr. Jonathan has over 20 years of experience in the fields of holistic healing, spiritual counseling, integrative medicine, and corporate consulting. Drawing from a Ph.D. in comparative religion in his travels to meet and study with healers and teachers in more than 40 cultures around the world, Dr. Jonathan makes spirituality simple and everyday inspired. Today, on the America Meditating Radio Show, we welcome this wonderful, special human being, Dr. Ellerby. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor.
And I know that you are serving as the lead minister at the Althea Center for Engaged Spirituality. Can you educate our listeners a little bit more on what is engaged spirituality, and what do you see as the difference between religion and spirituality?
Well, so we're just diving right in here, aren't we?
Why not?
So why not? Yeah. Well, so to just say a couple quick things about the center to explain why it took on the title. This has been a church for over 100 years, and what's been evolving though in this church is an ever-deepening commitment among its members and its board to the lived experience of awakening. The foundations were in the divine science tradition, which is a new thought tradition, and part of what is implicit in that tradition is the encouragement of, much like what you share on your show, the direct experience of the divine in the world, in ourselves, and to live through that experience of oneness. So the irony, of course, is that any tradition that fosters that kind of awakening in its members will ultimately become itself transcended. Because at least in our way of seeing things, or my way of seeing things, the religious path is a way to a place, to an experience, to an encounter, a way of holding a relationship with a place, with an experience, with an encounter, but it is not the destination in itself. So the movement from religion to spirituality, in some ways for me, is really about the movement from a focus on tradition, practice, and prescribed belief to an experience that may draw on those things, but primarily places its emphasis on the lived experience. The other dimension that you brought up, though, is, we use the term engaged spirituality to not only say that we're becoming more of a spiritual, inclusive community of, like-minded but diverse seekers, but we're particularly interested in this thing called engaged spirituality. For me, the differentiation between what maybe people generally think about as spirituality and what I like to define as engaged spirituality is that engaged spirituality places a primary focus on the demonstration of consciousness, meaning, right? So it's not just about what do you believe. The question is it evident in how you act? Is it evident in how you treat people? Is it evident in the difference you seek to make in the world? And part of this notion of engaged spirituality is the embrace of many ways of expressing spirituality. So we're inviting partnerships with musicians and theater groups and artists, because if a person is living their own truth and their own best experience of their soul, those would be examples of engaged spiritualities. Similarly, for those people that are out in the environmental movement or perhaps in social justice or working to make their communities a better place, more just, more fair, more safe, more healthy, then those too would fall into our definition of engaged spirituality. And those who perhaps are very devoted to spiritual study but do not demonstrate it would, frankly, actually perhaps not be counted as much in the kind of direction we're looking toward as perhaps those who never even use the word spirituality but show it in what they do every day.
I love that. Because I think we are looking for individuals who've become the embodiment of the words that they speak. Do you remember back in the days when we used to say, is this person actually walking their talk?
Right.
So it's like
yes,
that.
It's very similar. It's very much along those lines. And I even press it just a little further. I did this interview with a local student who's in a comparative religion class. And I guess I didn't realize how strong a position I had been taking until she kind of brought it out of me. And what I realized is that my message to at least our community here is this. And forgive me if it seems strong, but what the heck, right? This is provocative radio. My message is that I don't think that the path of awakening is really that interesting or important anymore. I actually have come to feel that that is just, for lack of a better expression, yesterday's news. That really we, I think, are in a place where we can step into the massive amount of good work and good teachings and good energy that has been cultivated on that search for awakening and a higher consciousness and move forward still. In other words, we, I think, are at a precious time where the spiritual journey needs to look outward again at the state of our environment, at the state of our global citizens, and say, if we wait another 50 years for people to make the change in themselves, we won't have much of a future for our children or our grandchildren to pray and meditate and exist within. So I'm actually advocating a certain kind of spiritual activism, even, let's say, equal to the inner work. I think the inner work is absolutely critical, and it's part of doing good in the world, being present and surrendered to our work, offering it up to the higher good. Yet, if we get too caught up in the inner world and what we do at home and what goes on in our minds, and it doesn't translate beyond our family, beyond the grocery store clerk, then I think we're missing an opportunity. In fact, I'd say we're probably not really awakened to the true nature of interconnection yet.
I concur, and I think perhaps one dimension is, the waking up, but I think the real homework comes in just staying consciously awake, like that I am mindful, that I am observing my thoughts and feelings, and they're matching perhaps a level of consciousness or vibration that keeps moving out an acronym that I use all the time called ALGE, A for anger, L for lust, G for greed, A for attachment, and E for ego. So I think that when you do begin to engage spirituality and basically begin to walk your talk, let those words match the experience within you so that vibe, that negative energy that we have created in the world gets out of the way, and we can actually create a future for our children to look forward to, being in and co-creating and just, supporting. Now, we've been talking about spirituality and religion and how to engage these things. Basically, I'm hearing that this whole area of interest that you are karmically connected to now is an embodied spirituality, where individuals are really embodying the spiritual things that they practice or speak. How did Dr. Jonathan get on his path of spirituality?
Well, like any story, I suppose it could be a long one, but in short, it wasn't really something I chose. As a young person, I had a very palpable experience of energy in the world. I sensed that there was energy in things and energy between things, energy flowing between people, and that each of these energies had its own kind of signature, its own kind of intelligence, and its own kind of way of being communicated with. And as I grew older, was starting to get around 10 or 11 years of age, I started to have more, I think at a younger age, you're less self-reflective, so I just perceived and felt these things. And then as I got older, I started to think about them, and it occurred to me that it was evident to me that there was a greater energy that somehow was a part of all the component energies of life, something that was kind of like an undercurrent or a song behind the story, if you will, sort of a backdrop to everything. And finally by, maybe 12 or 13, I really was in a place where I recognized that what I was preoccupied with and seeing and feeling was not really what it seemed that my friends were preoccupied with, or other young people at school had other interests. And so I became a little more curious about what made me different and who else in the world thought about these things. And that's really where I found the ancient scriptures. And it started for me with reading the Upanishads, which I just happened to have come across in a bookstore by great chance. And from there, just unfolded into a life of study and seeking further experience and mentoring, and ultimately always being interested in how to translate what I felt I was learning and benefiting from into something of value and practical use for others.
That's wonderful. It's always interesting when you're with your friends and they look at you like, what is he talking about?
Yeah.
Like, you really get this feeling, and we're too young at the time to decode it, but later on it gets clearer. We call that advanced souls. There's just a story within the soul, and it's got to move consciousness forward. And that's just the role that, the soul is here to play. Well, we've talked a little bit about soul, and I'd like to know, what is your definition of the soul?
Well, I certainly respect the fact that the soul is enough of a mystery that I don't know that any one person or tradition defines it completely. I also realize that, people do have very differing ideas of the soul, and so I'm going to share my own working definition, but with respect to the diversity that's out there. So first of all, I actually see the soul as having really four fundamental parts. I don't see it as a singular thing like the ghost of a person or the spirit of a person per se. And interestingly, in many traditions, from ancient indigenous traditions to ancient Judaism, you'll find more often than not a multiple faceted concept of the soul. So the first dimension, or you might say the innermost core of the soul, the way I talk and teach about it, is really that world soul or the divine soul. It's the place within each and every one of us that is purely identified with the divine. It's the divine's core within us, that place that when we touch that, or if we're fortunate enough to move into that awareness point within, we are literally within the infinite oneness of the divine. But, of course, we don't all dwell there, otherwise the world would look very different. We also have sometimes, depending on the group, I might use different terminology, but, we have a higher soul, or the great soul, or the true soul, or, there's a number of words you could use. What I'm talking about on this next level is there is a soul that I believe is making a great journey through multiple dimensions and lifetimes. So let's say you call that your true soul, or your great soul. So that means that if you, for those people who believe in past lives, feel you've been there and done that, that would have been the soul or the dimension of the soul that was also there and also did that and carries the cumulative wisdom experience. When people say, I believe we are souls evolving, that's the part that I think they're talking about, the true soul. But then there's a personal soul, or you could call it the personality, right, or the life soul. So then the life soul is the unique personality-based soul that comes in, meaning it's not formed by nurture or by biology alone. It is unique to that life. It's the soul of that life, but it goes when that life goes. So an example might be that you were once Mozart. Okay, so now again, this all presupposes reincarnation. But in that life, if you had said to Mozart, what were you born to be, you would have said a musician. I feel music is my nature, music is my essence, music is my passion. And in that life, that was the absolute truth of that soul. However, it is still relative. It was taken on in the great arc of the journey of the true soul in order to accumulate experience, wisdom, lesson, and learning. The final dimension, the fourth dimension that I talk about, is really just the life force, or, people call it chi or ki or prana. It's what acupuncturists are working on with the meridians, or, chakra healers and, subtle energy therapists. There's basically a pretty universal idea that there is a vital force that helps animate the body. And so when you put all these things together, an animating force, a unique life calling or personality, a deeper overarching soul, true soul that's journeying, all rooted ultimately in our original source, that would be the nature of the soul that I tend to talk about and work with.
Wow. And all this time I thought it was just a point of light.
Well, and you see with an explanation like this, of course, the point of light exists within
there
it.
You go. There
you go.
And
yet what I have found, and the reason why I work with the complicated definition like this, is because our seekers today and our students today are so much more educated and so much more dynamic and diverse in their understandings. So when they ask questions about life, was this meant to happen, and what's my purpose, and what's the lesson? Well, see, depending on which facet of the soul you are referring to, your answers shift and change. So, for example, the personal soul, the personal dimension, is very much concerned about realizing your truth and you expressing your passion and finding your talents. But you see, the great soul doesn't care so much about those things. In fact, the great soul learns just as much about God through unfulfilled truth as it learns about God through fulfilled truth. It's only the personal soul that gets frustrated with that. And similarly, when